Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 3rd August 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers, which are very relevant for your examination. In the initial two articles we have included two mains practice questions which will be highly relevant for your upcoming mains examination. In the first topic we will look into the status of Indian economy. Is it really dead? Particularly on the backdrop of recent statement by US President Donald Trump. In our second topic, we will look into various dimensions of gender gap in education, some possible reasons and solutions. After that, in our simplified section, we'll take up 5 articles and we will try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be very crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. So let's start our discussion with the first topic, that is the Indian economy really dead? The context of this topic is that US President Donald Trump made a statement that I don't care what India does with Russia, they can take their dead economies down together for all I care. We have done very little business with India, their tariffs are too high, among the highest in the world. India is tariff king, we have not been able to access Indian markets properly. But what can be some other possible reasons which might have agitated the current president? India has been one of the major buyers of Russian crude oil, especially when it was available at the cheap prices after the Russia-Ukraine war started. India is also one of the major defense trade partners of Russia. India bought MiG-21, India bought Mirage 2000, recently India bought S-400. Also various joint ventures between India and Russia like BrahMos, which was very instrumental in the success of Operation Sindoor. Also, the ceasefire which was announced between India and Pakistan since the Operation Sindoor was launched by India, US President said in public that he is the person who brokered the peace. He is the person who ensured that ceasefire is announced between India and Pakistan. However, India maintained a stance that there was no third-party mediation, there was no foreign leader involved in the ceasefire that was announced between India and Pakistan. Now coming back to our discussion, what is the status of Indian economy? Is it really dead? But what about US economy? So there was a movie that came way back in 1965 and the name of that movie was Waqt, and it was directed by Yash Chopra. The actor in that movie was Rajkumar, not the current Rajkumar Rao. There was a famous dialogue in that movie that जिनके घर शीशे के होते हैं वो दूसरों के घरों पे पत्थर नहीं फेंका करते. Those who live in the glass houses should not throw the stones at other houses. The jobs are dwindling, the inflation is ticking up, and the economy of the US has seen a lower growth rate as compared to what it witnessed in last year. But Mr. Trump is more concerned for Indian economy rather their own economy. And this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 3, growth and development. Now let's try to look into this data from last few decades about the GDP of India, US and some other countries. India's GDP at current prices in year 1995 was $360 billion and it increased to $4,187 billion in 2025. When we calculate the GDP at current prices, or we are talking about the nominal GDP which is calculated at current prices, the prices which is unadjusted for inflation, whereas when we talk about the real GDP, it is adjusted for inflation because prices are chosen from a base year itself. Whereas when we talk about the US economy, it was of size $7,640 billion in 1995 and it increased to $30,507 billion in year 2025. What about China? China's economy in 1995 was $738 billion and it increased to $19,232 billion in year 2025. What about GDP in 25 relative to GDP in 1995? How much exponential growth it saw? India's GDP saw a growth of 11.6%. It grew almost 11.6 times, whereas US GDP only grew to almost 4 times as compared to 1995 if we talk about the data of 2025. What about China? It grew almost 26 times if we compare the data from 1995 to 2025. Also, if you talk about the GDP in 1995 as percentage of US GDP in 1995, it was 4.7%. whereas the China's GDP was 9.7% of US GDP in 1995, and in 2025 the India's GDP as percentage of US GDP is 13.7%. It saw a exponential growth, but China's growth is exponentially very high. It is 63% of US GDP in 2025. Their size is 19,232. There has been various other countries like Germany and Japan which has done relatively almost at the same level which India did. So Indian economy is not dwindling. Indian economy is not dead economy. Rather, it has done very well if you talk about the few decades. If you look into this projections of the GDP growth rate percentage of 2025, this is the data which is released by IMF. It says that India will be one of the highest growing economy in 2025. The fastest growing economy, the highest growing economy will be India, and they said that India will be growing at 6.2%. But is everything all right about Indian economy? No, that is not the case. There are various concerns for India if you talk about the economy. For example, the growth momentum slowed. Although we are growing at around 6%, but the momentum has slowed down, especially after 2011-12. More than that, before the 2008 economic crisis started, we were growing to almost 8 to 9%. But since 2011-12, we are growing around 5 to 7% itself. We have not been able to breach this mark of 7.5% after the 2008 economic crisis. So the momentum has slowed down. Also, we are lagging way behind China. In 2014, India's GDP was 2.1 trillion, and as of now, it is 4.1 trillion by this financial year end. We have been able to achieve $4 trillion economy, but it took around 11 years to achieve this feat. Whereas if we compare it with China, it jumped from 1.9 trillion in 2004 to $4.6 trillion economy in just 4 years itself. And one of the contributing factor for them was their manufacturing. Also, the trade weakness, which is the talk of the town. Trade is one of the major concern why such kind of statements are being made. India's share in global exports for the goods is just 1.8%, whereas for services it is just 4.5%. So although tariffs are announced on Indian exports, but India is not one of the major suppliers to overall global exports. However, India is one of the major trading partners of the US. US is having a trade deficit with China as well as with India itself. Also, there are some other structural issues in the economy. For example, the protectionist policies that limits competitiveness. That why the trade deal was not signed between India and US is because India has several apprehensions with regard to the agriculture, the introduction of GM crops that US wants to do, the dairy industry that US companies want to access. The dairy industry contributes almost 5% to Indian economy, and around 8 crore farmers are directly employed in the dairy sector. But if the cheap products from US will flood Indian markets, these people who are involved, these people who are employed in the dairy sector, in the agriculture sector, their growth, their livelihood might be jeopardized. And that is the reason India has following a protectionist policies. More than that, there has been various other import duties which are applicable. For example, on the automobile, the high-end cars which are imported in India, there is a very high tariff that is applicable on that. Also, the farm economy is in distress. Majority of the population in rural areas is employed in the agriculture sector itself. Agriculture sector contributes 16% to GDP, and around 46% of the people are employed in the agriculture sector itself as per the data of Economic Survey 2025 itself. But the farm sector is not growing. It is around growing at a compoundable annual growth rate of 4.72% itself. More than that, the low productivity, the post-harvest losses, the climate change related impacts, which is again impacting the harvest, are one of the major concerns of the agriculture sector. That is the reason the agriculture was not able to increase its contribution in the GDP. Also, the manufacturing growth, it is around 4.04%, and which remains sluggish itself. The US or even the China, which saw a high GDP growth rate, it is only because of the manufacturing sector. India jumped from agriculture directly to the services. India could not achieve a proper growth rate in the manufacturing sector, which is one of the major reasons why we were not able to achieve that feat which China did in a shorter time frame. Also, the inequality and the human development, the skewed growth distribution. As per the report of the Oxfam, top 1% of India's people has more than 40% of wealth, and bottom 50% has less than 3% of wealth. So there is an income inequality, high inequality, that shows that even the size of the GDP is increasing, but the welfare of the people is not being equally distributed. The welfare is not happening properly in a uniform manner. Also, the 24% of population lives below the World Bank poverty line as per the data of the World Bank, whereas in 2011-12 this was 27% below the abject poverty line. So we saw only 3% decline as per the data from the World Bank. However, the Niti Aayog multidimensional poverty report of 2024 says that 11.2% is the head count ratio. So there is difference between the data of World Bank poverty and the Niti Aayog poverty, but still the poverty is high, which shows that the welfare is not happening in a proper manner. Only the growth is happening, not the qualitative improvement is happening. Also, the inequality, the poor health, education and the nutritional outcome. Anemia is very high. More than 53% of women are anemic as per the data from NFHS. The MMR, IMMR are still prevalent. The vaccination we were not able to achieve completely, especially for some of the high-end diseases. And the education, the gross enrollment ratio in the higher education is around 28% only. The health outcomes are also not very proper. The potable water availability, the nutritional security, food security we achieved, but the nutritional security is not, we were able to achieve. The per capita milk availability is not that good. So also we are witnessing the growth, but in the qualitative terms, people's lives are not improving. Also, the mismatch in the human capital, the youth unemployment that we are witnessing. We are in a phase that where we have one of the highest working age population, but we are not able to reap that demographic dividend properly. Why? Because there is poor alignment between education and jobs. The recent example where TCS laid off more than 12,000 people. Why? Because there is mismatch between the demand of the industry and what the universities are providing. The demand of industries, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, coding. But these universities are not updating their curriculum properly, and that is the reason there is mismatch between the demand of industries and what the skill set the current youth have. A lot of people are underemployed. That people have graduation degree, but still they are doing the jobs of delivery executives. They are employed in gig economy because they are not getting suitable jobs according to their education, according to their skill sets. That is the reason they are mostly employed in the informal sector. These are some of the concerns. Now, what government is doing? What are the measures that they have taken? So when we talk about the GDP, which is the total monetary value of all the goods and services that are produced in the domestic territory during a financial year, it can be calculated based on three methods. One is the value added method, second is the income method, and third is the expenditure method. When we talk about the expenditure method, it consists of four components. One is the household consumption expenditure, plus second is the private investment, plus third is the government spending, that expenditure that they are doing for paying the salaries of the people, employees, and the investment that they are doing for infrastructure building, etc., the expenditure which is being done by the government, plus the net of export, that is export minus import. So when we'll see that GDP is increasing, either of the component, if that is increasing, that will lead to overall GDP growth rate. So what government is doing, they are trying to promote consumption expenditure also, because this has been contributing almost 60% to our GDP. They are also trying to improve the private investment status in India. Also, the government capital expenditure is also increasing, and government is also providing proper support for the export promotion. So to boost consumption, government has rationalized the income tax. For example, the revised tax slabs are, there is no tax from 0 to 12 lakhs. Also, the RBI in its monetary policy has changed its stance. Now they have gone for a rate cut, where the RBI decreased the repo rate to almost 5.5% from more than 6%, which was few quarters back. Also, there was CRR cut and it brought down to 3%. When there will be more liquidity in the economy, when the cheap loans will be available, because repo rate is the rate at which the banks can get funds from the RBI. When the loans will be available, the money will be available with the banks at lower rates, obviously they will be lending, they will be giving loans at much cheaper rates, and the investment will be increasing in the economy. People's EMI will be decreasing because repo rate is decreasing. When people's EMI will be decreasing, people will have more money in their hands that they can spend in the economy, and that will further boost the consumption. Also, government announced the 8th pay commission. With this announcement, there will be drastic increase in the salaries of the government employees, and some of the other state governments might follow this trend, where they will be also rationalizing their pays according to the recommendation of the 8th pay commission. Again, when the people's salaries will be increasing, that will lead more money in the people's hand, and that people will be spending that money, that will further lead to higher consumption. These were some of the methods or measures to boost consumption. What about the private investment? How that is going to be increased? First of all, government rationalize the corporate tax. When the tax are rationalized, the compliance will be better. There will be more motivation for investment in the economy. Also, government started liberalizing Indian economy with the new economic policy in 1991. Recently also, there has been various measures that were taken. For example, the liberalization with regard to the FDI norms, 100% is allowed in insurance companies. There has been also liberalization with regard to the space sector to boost the space economy, so that more investment can come, which will be contributing to growth of Indian economy. Also, one of the important scheme, that was the production linked incentive, which was providing incentive based on the incremental sales of the company. Since it was based on the incremental sales, companies will be motivated to invest more in the economy to reduce the cost of the production, so that they can get more benefits. Here, incentives will be provided based on 4 to 6% on incremental sales of the goods that are manufactured in India. There are 14 key sectors which were targeted, like mobile phones, solar PV modules, etc. Also, 5 years was the tenure starting from financial year 1990-20. It created more than 1.3 lakh jobs by August 2024. Also, the outlay was more than 1.5 lakh crore. There has been other schemes like Make in India, where India was not going for any import restriction. Rather, India wanted to be a part of global supply chain. India wants to boost the Indian manufacturing sector, where under the vision of the Make in India, various other programs like PM Gati Shakti was launched, National Infrastructure Pipeline was announced. With these measures, this idea of the Make in India was again getting fulfilled. Also, this PLI was again in the line of the Make in India. Also, the Startup India, where the proper hand holding, the grants were provided to startup, where more than 1 lakh startups got the benefit of this Startup India program, and it also led to the various unicorns that India saw. That as of August 2025, around 118 unicorns are there in India. For improving the government expenditure, government increased the capital expenditure, which is around the 15% for the budgetary estimates of the 24-25 year, which again saw a increased trend. Then again, if you look into the other projects under the National Infrastructure Pipeline, again it saw increase and it consists of various key sectors like road, bridges, railways, urban transport. Because when government spends, it leads to crowd-in effect. Let's suppose government is building one of the expressway. Whenever government is spending, they are building this expressway, there will be more private investment that will be coming. For example, industries will be developed. For example, more restaurant, hotels will be coming. So when the government is spending, crowd-in is happening, that more private investment is coming here. When the privates are coming here, obviously they need people so that they can start the production process. So with the private investment, they will again employ more people. With more employment, people will have more wages in their hand. When people will have more money in their hand, they will be spending in the economy, which will further lead to overall increase in the demand of goods and services. When there will be increase in demand of goods and services, again there will be more production from the companies, which will create that whole cycle of the growth, and that will help in increasing the GDP size. Also, various other infrastructure measures like Udan scheme for the railways expansion plan, Bharatmala project, etc. were announced, as well as the Sagarmala, the port-led development, etc., to ensure the high robust connectivity is happening, as well as it can help in bringing down the logistics cost, which was much higher to around 13% of GDP if we compare it with the data of the other economies that where it is less than 10% of the GDP. Also, to boost exports, the Export Credit Guarantee Corporation of India Limited was changed to EC, which was a government export credit provider, and it provides the export credit insurance support to Indian exports. Also, this remission of duties and taxes on export producer, which was the mechanism to be created for the reimbursement of all the taxes, duties, or which are levied at center, state, or the local levels, so that when it will be given back to the exporters, they will be motivated to export more, and it will make Indian exports cost competitive in international market and boost employment generation. And what about the other measures that can be taken to ensure that India follows a robust GDP growth rate? As per the chief economic advisor, he said that to ensure that India achieve a high economic growth, there is need for deregulation of the growth. For example, there is need for deregulation and streamlining the business processes. There is need for a soft touch policy. There are some sectors which are over-regulated, and that is the reason they are not able to innovate properly. That is the reason they are not able to properly grow. For example, if there is a person who wants to open a hotel or who wants to open a restaurant, there are various clearances that the person needs from center government, state government, or even from the local government, their domestic municipal corporations. In that case, when there is too much of red tapeism, it becomes really difficult to comply with those laws, and these people are demotivated to invest. So that is the reason deregulation is needed, as well as there is need for enhancing export and trade policy. There is need for proper sync between industrial and the trade policy. For example, on one hand, government just start banning the export of wheat or rice whenever there is less availability in the Indian domestic market. But it impacts our foreign clients, that they will not be able to access Indian wheat or Indian rice, which was being earlier exported. Now, because it has been restricted because of the recent announcement of ban by the Indian government. In that case, they will look for certain other alternatives, that they will look for certain other people who can supply without any ban. So there is need for a proper policy coherence. There is need for a uniform policy, that it should not be knee-jerk reaction. And let's suppose India restricted the import of Chinese lights which we uses in the Diwali. But on the other hand, what are the measures that we have taken to boost the production of the Diwali lights in India? Answer was no, that we was not able to boost Indian production. In that case, what was the alternative with the people? These lights were readily available in the Indian market or in the Indian black market, or even if the Indian alternatives are available, that are of so high prices that people will not be able to afford that. So that is the reason, if we are going for a trade policy, there should be a sync with the industrial policy also. That industrial growth should also happen, industrial support should also be provided, and then we should change the trade policies. Also, we need for better hiring and the compensation policies. For example, the layoff that we are witnessing, the lack of social security measures if we talk about the gig economy or the contractual workers. So when we do not have proper hiring and the compensation policies, people are not motivated to work with their full potential. And that is the reason we are not able to achieve the potential GDP. Also, when we talk about the overall development, the qualitative improvement, if there is no proper hiring and the compensation policies, again, it leads to improper development of the people, whether it is the inclusive growth that is not happening properly. So for this, we can go for further rationalization or certain changes by proper stakeholders, by consultation with proper stakeholders. If you talk about the labor laws that are there, if there is some demand from industry or the civil society organization, we can incorporate those changes. Government can provide certain other social security measures, like employment linked incentive was recently launched by the government. Also, there is need for increasing the investment in infrastructure to accelerate the economic growth, because government will be one of the major player in boosting economic growth. When government will be increasing capital expenditure, when government will be doing the expenditure, it will lead to further crowding and it will boost the Indian economic growth. 1 lakh crore was announced under the National Infrastructure Pipeline. Also, the PM Gati Shakti, which was multimodal connectivity as well as inter-ministerial coordination, is getting increased in this. Sagar Mala, Bharat Mala, all has been one of the major government initiatives. But there is need for better oversight mechanism for ensuring that it is being utilized properly. Then we need to strengthen the trade agreements and the market access. For example, recently India announced the FTA with UK. Similar trade agreements needs to be finalized with various other countries so that we can access their markets properly and our exports can show a proper growth. Also, export only grew to almost 7.9% in financial year 2023, and that is the reason there is more potential to grow if we will be having a better market access. Apart from this, we also need proper sanitary and the phytosanitary measures that needs to be followed by the companies. For example, Indian MDH masala, Indian Everest masala was sent back by Hong Kong, Singapore or various other countries like EU, various other destinations like EU. Why? Because there was presence of ethylene oxide beyond permissible limit. This ethylene oxide is used in the sterilization in the medical industry. However, it is also used in masala or spices to prevent the germination of worms in it. But in India, they are selling anything, we are eating anything. But there are strict parameters if you talk about the foreign markets. When we are not adhering to those sanitary and the phytosanitary measures, obviously our products will not remain competitive at the foreign market and will have a negative image if we talk about our products. Also, we need to promote digital economy and innovation. That digitalization will drive the productivity and growth, and India's digital economy is valued at 15 lakh crore in 2025 as per NASSCOM, because this will help in bringing down the production cost and our product will become much more competitive, as well as it will boost the consumption expenditure because people will be able to afford it at a better price. What happened in the case of mobile phones, that India is one of the major exporter of the mobile phones, and that too in the US market also, because India, the labor was cheap, and with the assembly lines, with the proper investment in the mobile phone segments, we were able to achieve that growth in the mobile segment. And because of the low cost at which the mobile phones were available, you can see that almost everyone has access of the mobile phones. Also, we need to strengthen manufacturing and make in India. We need to focus on manufacturing and industrial output. Manufacturing sector contributes around 16.3% to GDP as per the data from financial year 2023. We need to increase that because this will help in people having more money in their hands, as well as it will lead to overall better economic growth. Also, the human capital development, this needs to be ensured properly. There is proper need of better industry academia linkages so that the academics can provide those skills which are demanded by the industry, as well as better skill training should be provided. For example, Pradhan Mantri Kausal Vikas Yojana 4.0 was launched with AI, IoT as some of the skills, as well as better healthcare facilities, especially the healthcare facilities needs to be promoted. Also, skilled workforce will drive the labor productivity. The productivity of labor will improve. Despite the same number of hours that they will be spending, they will be contributing more to the economy. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. Moving towards the next topic, that is gender gap in education. The context of this topic is that the recent data from 56th convocation ceremony of IIT Delhi shows a significant gender gap in education. The data says that a total of 530 PhD scholars and 43 international students from around 20 countries were among the people who were awarded degree from among the 2,764, but it was only 735, less than one third or 26% of those 2,764 who were women. That shows a drastic gender gap, and this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 2 education, social empowerment, and syllabus of your GS paper 1 role of women and women's organization. What about the data? As per the Global Gender Gap Index, which is released by the World Economic Forum, the index of 2025 edition shows that India's rank is 131st out of 148 countries. It consists of various parameters based on which this index is released. One of the parameters is economic participation and opportunity, where India has a score of 0.407. India's rank was 144th. In 2024, India's score was 0.398 and India's rank was 142. In educational attainment, India's score is 0.971, rank is 110. In health and survival, it was the score of 0.954 and rank was 143rd. In political empowerment, the score was 0.245 but the rank was 69th. One question that may come in your mind, that why despite having a high score in education and health, we are having a poor rank as compared to political empowerment, where we are having less score but we are having a better rank. It is because of the fact that in the education and health, other countries are doing relatively better as compared to India, whereas in the political empowerment, other countries are not doing that good as compared to India. Also, if you look into this data, that if we talk about the economic participation and opportunity, it consists of estimated earned income of the people, wage equality for the similar work, professional and technical workers, legislators, senior officer and managers, to what are they in these positions or not, as well as the female labor force participation rate, which is around 41.2% if we talk about the PLFS 23-24. Also, then political empowerment under this year with female or male head of the state, and women in ministerial positions, women in parliament, which is 74 women MPs are part of the current 18th Lok Sabha, and it was 78 women MPs in 17th Lok Sabha. And in the educational attainment, we have the tertiary educational enrollment, primary education enrollment, secondary education enrollment, and the literacy rate. In the health and survival, we have the sex ratio at birth and the healthy life expectancy. These are some of the factors which are considered for calculating that global gender gap index. Now, if you look into this data of enrollment by level of education and gender, what is the difference between boys and girls? What is the difference between male and female? Whether it is the pre-primary stage, primary stage, or upper primary, secondary, or the higher secondary, you can see in all the stages there is difference between the enrollment of the girl child as compared to enrollment of the boys child. And in the pre-primary level, we see some kind of parity. However, in the primary level, we see a drastic difference, drastic gap between the boys and the girls. Now, what are some of the possible reasons for this gender gap? First is the patriarchal norms and the societal attitudes. That what is the point of giving education to women? Since we have to marry this person and we have to marry this girl, and this will be going to someone's else house. This patriarchal norm, this social stereotyping that female are only suitable for expressive role, females are only suitable for the household works and unpaid family care, for which we do not need proper any kind of education. So this stereotyping and the patriarchal norm, this social attitudes, deprioritizes the women's education and the traditional roles that they are subjected to, that they have to bear and rear child, they have to take care of family, they have to cook, they have to do the cleaning. All this leads to a less availability of the education. Even if they are getting education, there is a preference of giving them the soft sciences like sociology, social issues, etc., rather than going for the STEM related courses which requires more time for the academics. And the example, for example, 41% of women have 10% year of schooling versus 50% of men as per this data of National Family Health Survey 5. Also, the early marriages and the dropouts, because when early marriages will happen, the other responsibilities will be given to the woman. The women will face dual burden syndrome. They will have to manage the education, they will have to manage their jobs if they are doing, as well as they will have to take care of the family also. In that case, it will curtail the educational continuity. They will not be able to go to college, they will not be able to go to universities because they have to take care of the family. And even if they get, once they start having the child, again there will be burden of that child also. Also, the median age at first pregnancy is 21.2 years itself. That implies the early marriages as per the data from National Family Health Survey. Ideally, you'll see that people are graduating at around 18, 19 years or 20 years. So if the woman is having pregnancy at 21.2 years itself, it means the person was married at 19 or 20 years itself. That shows that she did not get proper opportunity for the education and obviously not for the jobs. Also, the poor school infrastructure, that is lack of girls' toilets, boundary walls, it also discourages attendance. For example, this is the data from UDISE+, that is Uniform District Information for School Education. Now this data related to the girls' toilet says that if you talk about the government school, there are at least 5% schools where there are no toilets available. In the private sector, the private schools, 56% are such schools where there is no girls' toilet. And if you talk about the total schools, at least there are 3% schools where there is no availability of the girls' toilet. And why it is important? Why is it important to have the girls' toilet? It is because of the fact that once a girl child gets into puberty age, obviously she need a proper toilet to ensure she has a proper menstrual related needs getting addressed. So when we do not have proper infrastructure, also it demotivates these women. For example, the Kaya Kalp scheme which was launched by the UP government, or the project Alankar which was launched by the UP government. These were some of the schemes, state specific schemes which were launched by the UP government to ensure that boundary walls as well as infrastructure are being provided properly. Also, the digital divide, limited access to smartphones, internet, it hampers the learning, especially after the COVID-19, when it became very important to have some kind of online learning. For example, only 33% of women use internet versus 57% of women as per the National Family Health Survey itself. Also, the household responsibilities and the poverty, that women, as we said, that they are facing the dual burden syndrome, and that is the reason they face a time poverty. Poverty means where we do not have access of resources. Here the women are facing time poverty. They do not have proper time. As per the time use survey, if you talk about the caregiving duties, women spend 62 minutes more than men on a daily basis itself. That women at least spends 137 minutes per day for caregiving activities, caregiving to the old age people, to the child, etc. Whereas men only contribute 75 minutes per day. And 41% of women participated in caregiving, nearly double the 21.4% of men who did same. Also, women spend 83.9% of their time on unpaid activities, that is the household activities plus the caregiving activities, and while the men spent only 45.8%. It is around 7 or 6 minutes that women are spending on the unpaid activities, whereas it is around 2 or 43 minutes that men are spending for giving the for the unpaid activities. Also, the gender bias in the curriculum. The textbooks actually reinforces the stereotypes that limits the aspirations. For example, as per the UNESCO, a report in 2022 that says that 74% of Indian textbooks portray women in the traditional roles, that they are cooking or they are doing some expressive roles or they are in some of the soft positions. They are not in the instrumental roles. In that case, this will be further going on in the minds of the people, be it the child or be it the students, that okay, these women are more suitable for these roles, these men are more suitable for these roles. They will be socialized. These things will be ingrained in their minds. More than that, if you talk about the curriculum, just look at your NCERT books. How much space they have given to women freedom fighters. Although the contribution, if you talk about the men freedom fighters, was comparatively much higher because they have more space, they have more time to come in the public domain. But women freedom fighters also contributed significantly with the time, with the resources and the restrictions that they were subjected to, because even because of those restrictions, even with the burden of those restrictions, they contributed. But how much space these textbooks or even the NCERTs have given to them? How many of you know Dr. Ritu, who was the mission director of Chandrayaan-3? You would be aware of the current actress in the movie Sayyara, because that is promoted by the social media, because that is motivated by various other platforms. But we do not have proper promotion of the role models. When we do not have proper promotions, how the women or even men will be aware of these role models? So again, this limits the women's participation in the gender roles. There has been various other government initiatives that has been taken to promote the women's contribution. For example, the Niti Aayog's Saksham Bitiya initiatives to improve the capacity building. Then the National Education Policy, which incorporated for the Gender Inclusion Fund. With the help of these funds, the women's participation, women's contribution can be increased. Also, then women in science and engineering, Kiran, and there is another scheme with the name Vigyan Jyoti. All this is mainly mandated to increase the presence of women in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, maths, etc. There has been various other initiatives for overall empowering the Nari Shakti, like the Triple Talaq, the Ujjwala scheme, to ensure that every woman gets a proper gas connection so that they do not have to spend time for collecting the firewoods, maternity paid leaves, so that the pregnancy like situations do not hamper their employment. Then the Poshan Abhiyan for overall nourishment and the nutritional security for women to address the conditions like anemia, because when women will not have proper nutrition, they will be anemic, or there will be certain other disease that they will be subjected to. Obviously, their participation in education, their participation in employment will be limited. Mission Indradhanush for increasing immunization, or even Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, Beti Pachao, Beti Padhao, or the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, which was kind of a scheme where whenever a girl child is born, there is a high rate of interest which is provided. It is a kind of saving scheme. Or Mahila Samman Saving Certificate, which was launched in budget 2023. Again, there was a high interest rate of 7.5%. Balika Samriddhi Yojana, Central Board of Secondary Education CBSE Merit Scholarship Scheme for single girl child, National Scheme for incentives to girl for the secondary education. All these are the schemes for improvement of the enrollment of the girl childs. Or the specific schemes like Kanya Sumangala Yojana of Uttar Pradesh government, where in different slots amount of money is given once woman is born, second when she attains all the immunization she attains, then when she goes in the primary education, then in class 5th, and subsequently after 21 years after she graduates, the final transactions happen. But what should be done? What should be the way forward to address this gender gap? We need to address the poverty and the social barriers. We can go for conditional cash transfers so that money can be utilized. For example, there is an Aspire scheme by DST, Department of Science and Technology. This Aspire scheme was giving scholarship to the meritorious girl child who was getting very good marks in class 12th. So with more cash transfers, when women will have more money in their hand, the families who are poor, they will not have to bear the burden of that education. Rather, the women will have money, they can choose their own course, they can invest in their education. Also, there is need for community awareness campaigns to address the gender stereotyping, to dismantle that social attitude and the gender stereotyping that women are more suitable for only the unpaid activities. Also, we need to improve the access and the quality of the education, because there is a fear of violence, there is fear of the exploitation that women might be subjected to during their course of going to the classes or the schools. When schools will be available within less distance, it will be much easier for them to access the school, to go to the school. So we need to increase the girls' school in rural areas. We need to invest in the quality educations, that proper teachers are available, proper digital boards, proper digital integration is happening. We also need to prioritize the sanitation facilities. We not only need girls' toilet, we need functional toilets which has all the at least basic amenities available in these girls' toilet. Also, we need to focus on the STEM education. Some evidence-based policy making can happen for this. Some selected targeted scheme can come, like Vigyan Jyoti is there. Also, empowering girls and families, the scholarship programs, life skill and career counseling, the role models, the people who are doing very good specifically in certain domains, they might be motivated, they might be promoted, so that they can give some skill sets, they can counsel, they can motivate other women. The parental education, that is again an important factor, because when people will be educated, they will understand the importance of education, and they will be also motivating their girl child to go for the education. Apart from that, when the parents will be socialized that there is no discrimination that is between men and women, they will be also socializing their children, they will be also giving those values to their child. And when child will be seeing that these are values at my home itself, that there is no discrimination between men and women, he or she will be also learning the same thing. More than that, what is generally witnessed in the rural areas, that why people go for early marriages, that let's suppose there is a father who is a daily wage worker. The person will not find it to work properly after he gets over the age of 50 years. And around 90% of India's workforce is employed in informal sector itself, where there is lack of proper social security measures, lack of pension, lack of gratuity, etc. So this father, especially people in the rural areas, this is the mindset that I am telling, that they think that let's marry the girl at young age itself, otherwise I will not be able to do a proper marriage, because for marriage people also take some loans. And at this point of time, when the girl is 20 years, or let's suppose father is 25 years or 30 years, he is having at least 15-20 years of fruitful productive age, where he can earn and he can give up that loan that he is taking for the marriage of his girl child. That is the reason people go for early marriages. So to address that, if there will be more proper formal employment, there is proper social security measure, this father will of view, okay, no issue at all, at least I am having a sustainable, I have a proper uniform salary, I will be also getting pensions, I will also take some funds from my PF accounts, etc. for this marriage, and let's invest at this point of time for the education of my girl child. Whenever she will be ready, whenever she will say ki now I can marry, I am ready to marry, the father will be only marrying at that point of time. So because of this informalization, because of this poverty, because of presence of daily wage work, high construction work, etc. are the reasons why we witness this early marriages. And let's focus on the education. Also, we need to utilize technology and education for distance learning and digital education. For this, we need to bridge the digital divide. The educational apps and the content like Diksha portal is there, Swayam Prabha is there, various other channels are available. Their accessibility should be improved. Also, the sanitary hygiene kits needs to be provided properly so that women are not subjected to, or they are not only limited to homes only during their menstrual cycle. Also, with the digital education, when with the new technology, with the care work can be taken with the help of care work can be given to the technologies. Women will have more spare time, extra time that they can invest in the education and the employment. For example, if there are creche facilities, they can take care of the rearing of the child, and women can focus on the education and the employment. Also, legal and institutional framework, there is need for strict enforcement of the Right to Education Act and reservation for women in educational institutions, stronger legal mechanism against the child marriages. These are some of the measures that can be incorporated to improve the educational status of women. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. Moving towards our simplified section, first topic is that world's highest bird death rates at Thar desert in Rajasthan wind farms. And this is related to your GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 12. So the writer is saying, with increase in the installed capacity of wind energy, what we are witnessing that birds are striking the wind turbines, and that is leading to death or mortality of the birds, especially some of the migratory birds, the like GIB, Great Indian Bustard, they are also under the threat due to this. So it says that researchers have estimated that each turbine in Thar desert is responsible for 1.24 bird deaths per month. This is the data from the Wildlife Institute of India. And the study was conducted in a 3000 square kilometer landscape, which is home to 900 wind turbines and 272 bird species. And India has added 3.5 gigawatt of wind power in 2025, which has boosted the total installed capacity to 51.3 gigawatt. And the study found the wind farms in the desert is the world's highest bird mortality rates, is witnessing the world's highest world mortality rate. Also, researchers have documented that 125 bird carcasses located 150 meter from 90 meter randomly selected turbines. Raptors were most affected due to their flight style and low reproductive rates, the researchers said. Experts have stressed that the proper site selection is crucial to reducing the bird deaths at wind farms. We need to see that is this farm located along some of the routes which are used by some of the migratory birds, or is it located to some of the areas where birds are mainly the habitats of birds are located. Offshore wind offers promise but needs better environmental studies to avoid harming the marine ecosystem. So we need proper environment impact assessment to actually look after before installing the these kind of projects, that how it will be impacting the flora and fauna. And it says that birds mortality rate at wind farms are highest in the world in the India's Thar desert. So that is the reason this has been one of the major concerns. Also, some data, if we talk about the state-wise wind power installed capacity by July 2024, this data can be very important for your prelims examination. If you talk about the data from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Gujarat is the state with highest installed capacity of the wind power. After that we have Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Rajasthan. And Karnataka is the state which saw the highest increase in the installed capacity if you talk about the financial year 24-25. The decreasing or the increasing order can be asked in the prelims examination. Next question is that bill to regulate private school fee set to be tabled in assembly. There has been lot of protest with regard to the hike in the school fee that was witnessed in the private schools of Delhi. That is the reason the Delhi government is bringing one bill to regulate the private school fees. This is related to your GS paper 2 education and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 4. The bill aimed to prevent the profiteering in line with the National Education Policy 2020. But one of the major concern among the parents is that provision that only a group comprising 15% of parents in affected class or school may file an appeal before the District Fee Appellate Committee. This clause defined under section 2 of the bill raises the threshold for highlighting the grievances and has been widely criticized. The people, the forums of parents are saying that it has given more powers to the school management committees. Plus, this threshold that is 15% is too much. There may be a case that 15% of parents will not be ready for going for any complaints with the District Fee Appellate Committee. 1 to 10 lakh fine for the unapproved fee, refund provision in 20 working days, 50,000 penalty for student for coercive practices like striking off name off rolls, withholding results over non-payment, mandatory to form school level fee regulation committee every year by July 15 with principal, a management nominee, 3 teachers, 5 parents drawn from lottery. Fee structure for a block of 3 academic years to be proposed. Committee to approve fee structure by September 15 and if deadline not met, matter to be referred to District Fee Appellate Committee. Further appeals may be taken to revision committee which will be constituted by the government. These are some of the major provisions of the bill. Also, this bill will be tabled in the monsoon session of the Delhi Assembly. As per Article 174 of the Constitution, Governor, who is the head of the state, can summon the state legislature. Also, similarly, Article 85 of the Constitution says that central legislature should be summoned to meet at least once in a year. Not more than 12 months could elapse between 2 sessions. Means at least there cannot be more than 6 months gap between the 2 sessions. Also, the first session is the budget session, that is the longest session of the parliament, which starts towards the end of January and concludes by the end of April of first week, and it has a recess so that parliamentary committees can discuss the budget proposals. Whenever budget is presented, then after it is there is a recess period during which the committees scrutinizes all the demands. Also, then we have the second session, that is the monsoon session, which is 3-week long session, usually begins in July and ends in August. Third session is the winter session, which is held for 3 weeks and lasts from November to December. Our next topic is that ISRO targets 2027 launch for LVM-3 semi-cryogenic stage. This is related to your GS paper 3 space technology and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 6. So the context is that Indian Space Research Organization ISRO is aiming for 27 launch for its first LVM-3 launch vehicle, and this human rated LVM-3 will be also used for Gaganyaan mission with a semi-cryogenic propulsion stage. And it says that right now we are on track. Power head tests on the engine are progressing with great success. 5 to 6 tests have also been completed as of now. Target is first quarter of 27 as per the ISRO chairman V. Narayanan. Also, this formally it was known as the GSLV Mk3, also known as the Fat Boy or Bahubali. And 3-stage LVM-3 had its first experimental flight in December 2014 way back and is ISRO's most powerful rocket till date. The semi-cryogenic stage is designed to enhance the payload capability while keeping the cost down. What is the difference between cryogenic and the semi-cryogenic? So specifically, if you talk about the cryogenic, what does it mean? It relates to any branch of the physics that details with the production and effects of very low temperature. You can also relate it with the cryosphere, which consists of areas with very low temperature. In the cryogenic engine, the fuels are liquid hydrogen, that is LH2, and liquid oxygen, that is LOX. Whereas in semi-cryogenic, the refined kerosene plus liquid oxygen will be used as fuel. The fuel temperature in cryogenic, LH2 is at minus 253 degrees Celsius, whereas the liquid oxygen is at minus 183 degrees Celsius. Whereas in the semi-cryogenic, it is minus 183 degrees Celsius, whereas the kerosene is stored at ambient temperatures. The complexity is much high as compared in the cryogenic engine due to handling of ultra cold liquid hydrogen that requires insulation challenges. That insulation should be proper so that it doesn't lose heat. Also, the handling is much complex in the semi-cryogenic because of the high stability of kerosene at room temperature. The cost is much expensive in the cryogenic as compared to semi-cryogenic, which is much cheaper because kerosene is cost effective, and the simpler logistics is there. Thrust, the cryogenic gives lower thrust but higher specific impulse, which efficiency it provides in the vacuum, whereas the semi-cryogenic provides for higher thrust, which is ideal for heavy lift boosters. Also, the advantages are high efficiency, that is the specific impulse around 450 per second that it provides, clean exhaust, water vapor, whereas the high thrust to weight ratio, high density impulse, more fuel storage is required, but it is cost effective if you talk about the this semi-cryogenic, right? So also this is capable of lifting 4,200 kg of payloads to geosynchronous transfer orbit. What is the geosynchronous transfer orbit? This is the orbit where the rocket takes the satellite halfway, and then the final orbit that will be taken, geosynchronous orbit, that the satellite will be taking with the help of its own fuel itself. For example, if you have to go to 10th floor and the lift is taking you to 5th floor itself, only till 5th floor, from 5th floor to 10th floor you are going on your own. That is the case that is happening. So LVM-3 will bring the satellite to the geosynchronous transfer orbit. From there itself it will go to the geosynchronous orbit on your own. The small engine that is there in the satellite will be providing the required energy for the satellite to transfer from GTO to geosynchronous orbit. Moving towards next topic, that is Indonesia's Mount Lewotobi Laki erupts again. This is related to your GS paper 1, important geophysical phenomena, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 12. This is very important for your geography as well as for the mapping perspective. So the context is that Mount Lewotobi Laki, one of the Indonesia's most active volcano, erupted again for a second straight day, sending a column of volcanic materials and ash up to 18 kilometers into the sky early Saturday. However, there were no casualties that was reported. The volcanic materials, including the hot thumb sized gravel, was thrown up to 8 kilometers from crater, covering the nearby villages and town with the thick volcanic residue. Also, this is the location of this Mount Lewotobi Laki in Indonesia. You can also see this is located in that circum-Pacific belt itself, near the Philippine belt and Indo-Australian plate itself. Now, why it is important? Because see, this circum-Pacific belt is also called as the ring of fire, where the tectonic movements are very high. It is the zone where we see high amount of volcanic activities as well as the earthquake related activities. What exactly is the volcano? It is a vent or chimney which expels magma. Magma is the molten rock material from beneath the earth's crust to the earth's surface. Eruption occurs when a buildup of pressure from under the mantle breaks up through the earth's surface. When there will be too much pressure that will be built, that magma will come upside and it will break the earth crust and it will be in the form of the lava flows. Volcanoes are commonly found at the meeting places of two tectonic plates. These plates frequently move between each other, causing the volcanic activities. Please try to remember at least the location properly, because this can be asked in the examination. Next topic is Competition Commission of India. This is related to your GS paper 2 statutory bodies, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 11. So the regulator has ordered a detailed investigation into the Google's conduct of online display of advertisement that you witness while you search on the Google or on different websites. And this is because of the complaint which is filed by Alliance of Digital India Foundation. And the CCI has said that there is need to club the complaints with ongoing investigation and directed DG to carry out a consolidated probe with regard to the Google's conduct in EdTech ecosystem. DG is also directed to investigate various alleged practices of Google in online display advertising services and or EdTech intermediation services and submit a consolidated investigation report in the matters accordingly. And the Alliance of Digital India Foundation alleged that Google has engaged in anti-competitive practices across various players for its advertising technology stack. Means it is giving more support to any one agency and discriminating between or discriminating to with the other agencies. This Competition Commission of India is an statutory body, means it has been established by an act. That act is Competition Act 2002, and it replaced the MRTP Act on the recommendation of Raghavan Committee. It is under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and it was established in 2019. And it was mainly established to enforce this Competition Act 2002. Composition of this CCI is one chairperson plus up to 6 members appointed by the central government. They have the quasi-judicial body. It is a quasi-judicial body with advisory and enforcement powers. The eligibility is that the person who is being appointed must be qualified as a High Court judge or have a 15 plus years of experience in law, economics, trade, business, finance, etc. Also, the act prohibits anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominance. For example, tomorrow, if Zomato and Swiggy wants to merge together and they want there will be only one player in the food delivery business, that will not be allowed by the Competition Commission of India. It also regulates various practices that may have the adverse market impact. It was amended in 2007 and National Company Law Tribunal in 2017 replaced this COMPAT, which was the earlier tribunal. The functions of it are ensure fair competition and consumer welfare, advise government and statutory bodies, conduct advocacy, training and awareness, promote efficient market and inclusive growth. That is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.